Has Dormammu GBR become too easy? And if so, why? That's what I want to talk about today, amongst other things about GBR, because we didn't really talk about this when the update came out, but I have seen a lot of people reference it both negatively and positively. I've seen people happy that Dormammu is easier now because it means that they can clear faster, that they don't have so many, 8-minute, 9-minute nail biter type clears. But I've also seen people say that it makes it too easy and they want some sort of group challenge. But I do think it relates. I have a few theories, but I do think it relates to whatever this new dynamic game mode is. Perhaps they're going to do something with some sort of new GBR boss. That's an alternative idea that I have, where they're neutering Dormammu a little bit here because they're going to introduce something even harder, even more difficult, and have some sort of upgrade system that you obtain through that. But yeah, I wanted to show off a few clears here. This is with type advantage. Doctor Strange just absolutely shreds this shit. And yeah, under 1 minute. So for those of you that missed it, when I talk about how they made Dormammu easier and is it too easy now, essentially Dormammu used to have 1.41 billion HP, right? He used to have 1,400,000,000 HP. Now, if you add it up, right, you can see that he has a lot closer to 1.1 billion HP. So they just lopped off about 300,000 HP from his base HP. From 1.4 billion HP, if you lop off about 300 million, that's about 22%. So they made his HP 22% less than it was, and by some accounts made him 22% easier. I wouldn't exactly say it's 22%. I think it's pretty close to being about 1/5 easier. But that doesn't really add up to a lot in the grand scheme of things, because if you were clearing it in a minute and a half, you're still clearing it in like a minute and 10, a minute and 15 seconds. Like, to be honest, I don't notice a big change in his HP from before. It seems like, if I have a really good run, maybe sometimes it's a little bit faster, but overall it seems like I'm still clearing in about a minute and change. That's been my clear speed now for a while with tier 4s, a minute and change. Namely because all of the characters that I have, at least on my roster, that have brilliant rages, which would be the best option for Dormammu GBR, they're not very good at clearing Dormammu GBR. They were given those CTPs for other reasons. So I gave one to Luna for ABX ABL, I gave one to Magneto for ABX ABL, and more recently I had one on Dr. Octopus and I switched it over to Loki, right? But none of those characters are good at GBR, right? Magneto's okay, but they're all pretty slow. And that's another point that I wanted to make, is that nobody really builds characters anymore for GBR. So I don't think the change really matters all that much, because of the fact that if you're building up characters for PvE content, it's sort of just like a secondary auxiliary benefit where you're like, oh yeah, like I just tier 4'd Sharon Rogers for World Boss, or I just tier 4'd Gladiator for ABX ABL, and they just so happen to also be good at GBR in this case, right? Whatever the example may be, it's just a secondary benefit. But nobody is like, who should I tier for GBR? Which is why I've largely stopped doing GBR content and testing new tier 4s and that sort of thing in videos in GBR. I still test them on live streams just for fun, just to farm mats, whatever. But overall, I feel like it's just a secondary benefit. And I might be wrong about this. You can correct me down below in the comments if you think otherwise, if you are still tier 4ing characters for GBR. But I would be surprised. If anything, I would say if a character comes out that's really, really good at level 80 for GBR, like I remember back in the day, Ant-Man was surprisingly good, and so was Venom, you might consider taking that character to level 80 specifically, not tier 4, but just getting them to level 80, but just getting them over that hump so that you can use them in that specific content because of the value it provides with a minimal investment. That I can totally understand. Wow, that guy already lost his Thanos. That's impressive. That I can totally understand, but otherwise, yeah, I don't think people are tier 4ing specifically for GBR. But yeah, then that brings up the other question of why, right? Are they just nerfing Dormammu GBR? Do they just make him easier because they want the game to be easier to players who find it difficult? Because there certainly isn't any, there isn't any lack of difficult content for players who want to wail a lot. Like, Wow, did he not? Oh, he already did it. Right. Why didn't I pop the tier 3? That was just a mistake. You have, climbing #1 world boss legend ranks. You have pushing ABX, ABL scores. You have a lot of different things that players can do if they find themselves needing a challenge. Whereas the game can still be pretty daunting and overwhelming for new players. So I don't mind the nerf whatsoever. Again, like I said, I didn't really notice it. It's probably the players that were just barely clearing Dormammu that notice it, and that's good that it affected those players. What I'm more interested in is what's going next, like what's going to happen next because of this, and where it sort of is this going, because that's really what interests me. And where this is going naturally leads to the conversation about a new GBR boss. But along with a new GBR boss potential, which I think is absolutely there, maybe like a tier 4 only GBR if they really are trying to push that dynamic that they introduced in World Boss Legend Plus, which I think didn't have the intended effect that they wanted it to have, which is fine because honestly they kind of executed it poorly. But what I want them to do actually is not just introduce a new GBR boss. Like, okay, sure, they nerfed Dormammu, and then they're going to introduce like a Nihilist or Beyonder or whatever. What I'm more interested in is I want them to make use of the existing bosses. So Master Mold and Galactus, those are really cool enemies, and I feel like it's kind of sad and shitty that they're relegated to being just beginner bosses that you forget about. This should have killed him. If it doesn't, then I screwed up somewhere. Yep. On is rolling in his grave somewhere. Hypothetical grave, obviously. Not metaphorical grave. For me screwing up this Iron Man clear here. So is Apache. Basically, 2 of my mods are mad at me for playing Iron Man badly. Yeah, that should have happened. That should have gone way faster. Especially since that guy Claw was helping me. But it's really sad. Like I do want to make this the sort of focal point of the rest of the video, because Dormammu is cool, but Galactus is actually cooler than Dormammu. I'm not gonna lie to you. And then Master Mold is really cool, especially now with X-Men 97. He's a really cool mutant GBR. And so really what we should be talking about is they should make all of these bosses of equal difficulty. Whatever, they can have a sliding scale for difficulty that you can engage with, right? You can choose whether you want to play Giant Boss Raid Normal or Giant Boss Raid Legend, or whatever, Extreme. They should just have that duality where you can make any of these bosses super easy pushovers, but you just farm like little bits of rewards. You don't get the good stuff, right? Or you can go to Giant Boss Raid Legend, and that's where you get, Soul of the Faltine drops. That's where you get, the good stuff, right? But they should make them all difficult, because some days I really want to beat up Galactus. I really want to beat up Master Mold. But these dudes are like wet napkins now compared to Dormammu. Like, you literally one-shot Galactus with one rotation. You one-shot Master Mold, absolutely. So it's not really fun. But it should be fun. But even more so than that, they should segment these bosses with more interesting, more dynamic restrictions. Like, Dormammu should take more damage from magical allies like Doctor Strange, Wanda, etc. And he should take less damage from everyone else. On top of whatever, type advantage, type disadvantage stuff is going on, they should also have that additional sort of restriction or that additional caveat. Galactus should take more damage from aliens, right? Because in large part, aliens are the ones battling Galactus, like Silver Surfer turning on him, like the Guardians of the Galaxy, Beta Ray Bill, etc. Those are the people genuinely that are going to battle Galactus, not Captain America and these like humanoids, right? Humans should not be able to hold a candle really to Galactus, because they have to worry about breathing in space before they even have any chance of beating up the galaxy's #1 eater. So that would be really cool, right? If aliens have bonus damage against Galactus, you can see where this is going. And then mutants should have bonus damage against Master Mold. So there you go. You've just touched on the 3 most important categories of characters in Marvel Future Fight. Mutants are obviously the most important category, so you touch on them for Master Mold. Aliens are the second most important category. You have Thanos, Silver Surfer, you have all these really cool ones. And then here, I said magic characters, but maybe it could just be humans, to be honest. Maybe just humans could be better against Dormammu, and there you've basically covered the 3 most important factions with humans, aliens, and mutants, because no one gives a shit about Inhumans, and I just can't even remember the rest of them. So yeah, I really think that's what they should do. And then whatever, the 4th GBR boss could have something wacky, right? I really think that's something they should do, and I think it's a really cool idea. On top of that, I just want to point this out. Are we stupid? Again, I also should have mentioned this right at the top of the video, but someone tagged me on Twitter, and I should have responded. I didn't. Let's do a little bit of math, okay? They say right there in the little you know, that little banner above the Soul of the Faltine, it says 20% up. And if you recall, the original amount that you could farm when this came out, when Tier 4s came out, was 150. So what I want you to do with your calculators, I want you to pull out your calculators, ladies and gentlemen. You know, pull over your car, you know, pull out your calculator and type in 150, and then multiply that by 1.2, because 1.2 is 20%. And if you hit equals, you're gonna get a number that is not 165. Spoiler alert, it's 180. So if you didn't do the math, I'm disappointed, but not surprised. No, I'm kidding. It's 180. So 20% increase of 150 is 180. So what in the math leads hell? Like, who was it? Cynicalex math? Like, who did this math? This is 10%. If you do 150 times 1.1, you get 165. They've only been giving us 10% increase Soul of the Faltine since this new system came to be, right? This new progressive system, right? Where it's 20% increase. Look, it's 15% on World Boss, which I have no idea if that's true, right? We never had the chance to do the numbers really. And then it's 20%. Even says right here, it says 20%. That's wrong. That's 10%. So is this really 7.5% instead of 15? How did they get this so wrong? They're literally off by a factor of 50%. So they've basically been stealing. They've basically been denying us 15 Souls of the Faltine now for, I don't know, how long? Like, how many months has this system been in the game? 2? 3? That's like 90 days worth of Soul of the Faltine, of 15 Soul of the Faltine. Do you know how much Soul of the Faltine that is? It's actually not that much Soul of the Faltine. It's 1,350. Even if this system's been in the game for 3 months, and I honestly can't remember how long this system has been in the game for. It hasn't been that long, but whatever. Let's say 3 months. That's only 1,350 Soul of the Faltine. But still, that's a non-insignificant number. So if nothing else happens from this video, I need the devs to change this. They need to either change this to stay 10%, which is kind of sad, or they need to update the amount because their math is so shit, and it needs to say 180, because that's what it should be. It should be 180, not 165. Really should have led with this in the video. Anywho, hit me up in the comments down below. Let me know what you think of GBR and the math. Thank you so much for watching. Smash the like button if you enjoyed the content, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.